VOLA shot into my life with their extraordinary debut album of In Mazes, a record I will champion until the end of time as one of the most electrifying debuts of any modern progressive metal band out there. But VOLA never stood still, reinventing themselves on Applause of a Distant Crowd and Witness, marking them out as a true evolutionary band for the current era. But sadly, Friend of a Phantom feels more like a stumbling dead end than it does the next step in their metamorphosis. Guys, gals and non-binary pals, my name is Ian, this is Rhyme Signatures, and we are once again opening the lid on the best new releases in prog rock and metal.
Truth be told, I don't remember what went down, but I'm still...
I'm quite certain that I've already annoyed a lot of people, and I'm certain that I will need to prepare my flame shield for this review. But there are times where I feel the need to speak up and let my feelings known on an album, even if the overall tone and message of my thoughts is less than positive. But yes, as a general rule, I am a huge fan of VOLA. As mentioned earlier, In Mazes is one of my all-time favourite prog metal albums, and I will always have a weird association to the video game Path of Exile with it, as I spent a lot of time playing that game in 2016 and mainlining the record whilst doing so. I also loved Applause of a Distant Crowd and Witness, as the guys started playing with more experimental sounds, dropping the gentler guitars for poppier, more electronica-style soundscapes, and I thought it worked remarkably well. I normally find myself missing previous elements that have faded out in favour of newer directions and approaches, but VOLA were able to make the new sounds that exciting and well implemented that despite the angular differences in tone and style, their second and third albums stood tall and proud alongside In Mazes, making for one of the best trio of albums I've seen in recent years. In fact, it felt like VOLA were on the meteoric rise, a band who could do no wrong and whose bold and inventive recreation of self would become a hallmark in the progressive metal world. Sadly, I have not gotten on particularly well with Friend of a Phantom, and if you'll indulge me, I'll explain what hasn't worked for me, and while I feel this is easily their weakest, least ambitious album to date. Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom. I don't hate this album, Lord no. There's still a lot that VOLA does extremely well here. The biggest draw is just how catchy a lot of the songs on this album are. The love it or loathe it hook from Break My Lying Tongue sits well with me. Its sour and acidic tonality worming its way firmly into my brain and refuses to leave, but actually fitting very comfortably by the time the song plays out. We Will Not Disband is easily the best song on the album for me, with synth that harkens back to the glory days of In Mazes, and a huge, methodical, belting central melody that's both fist-pumping and head-nodding, making itself a clear and obvious future live-setting favourite. I just hope that there's not a grim irony to the song's title that reveals itself in a few years' time, because oopsie-whoopsie, that would be a teensy bit embarrassing. The calming glass mannequin and energetic hollow kid are further favourites, with both sharp lyricism and an excellent sense of melody and hookiness that makes them incredibly easy listens, and certainly songs that I've come back to the most outside of the scope of the album's overall structuring. Asger Maigind remains one of the most soothing and enjoyable vocalists in modern prog. His unique timbre feels both warm and inviting, no matter how aggressive the music might require him to be. Now, it's hard to describe precisely what it is about how he delivers the overall excellent lyricism throughout the album, but there's a certain sense of familiarity and friendliness to it all, giving off a vibe like he's an old friend who's speaking directly to you. The synth and the keyboards used on the record remain excellent as well, with plenty of variety in sounds and attitudes, which makes for some songs that manage to sound detailed and intricate despite the album's brevity. And the guitar tone remains as thick and meaty as ever, forming a central part of my enjoyment of VOLA's overall sound and style. Okay, let's start losing friends and admirers. Like I've said, I don't hate this album. There are elements of this that work well, and plenty of songs on here that I would still call enjoyable. But When I take a step back and look at this album as a fan of the band and from an objective viewpoint as a music critic, I can't help but feel incredibly disappointed. Friend of a Phantom feels painfully safe and average, taking precisely zero risks and remaining so steadfast within the lane that the band slotted into with Witness, it's almost impossible for me to believe that these songs weren't just recorded 3 years ago and have been kept warm on the stove until now. Everything here has a sense of heard it all before, and for a band that have for 3 albums been pushing the envelope of what it means to be progressive metal, to hear them this regressive is a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. Now, for as surface level enjoyable as most of the songs on this album really are, none of them are genuinely exciting. They all feel a little bit Frankenstein together from various parts of their earlier albums, and for a flourishing band putting out their 4th record, there really is no excuse for this. Now, bands 30 years and 10 albums into their career, you can kind of forgive a little bit of backtracking. So let's look at some of their contemporaries sharing the same space. Leprous' 4th album, The Congregation. Haken's Affinity. Between the Buried and Me, friggin' Colours. Protest the Hero, Volition, Caligula's Horse, In Contact. Look, you get the idea here, right? The point I'm making is that your 4th album should not be something that is leaving me feeling flat and bored before it's even halfway finished. At this point in your career, you should be over the creative hump of the first couple of records and firing on all cylinders to be making, quite frankly, masterpiece records. Friend of a Phantom is an often tedious, uninspiring hodgepodge of some reasonable ideas, but nothing that leaves me feeling anything at the end of the day, other than just a general sense of apathy. Okay, sure, there's a couple of bangers here that stand taller than the rest, okay, but even the best songs on this album aren't even half as good as the worst tracks from previous albums. There's a general sense of just, I don't know, lethargy to it all, like these were written and recorded in a hurry in order to satisfy some sort of label-mandated requirement to get a new record out in the world. The album is a short 41 minutes, which isn't outside of the norm for the band, but a lot of the songs feel like they're constantly dancing around getting to the ruddy point, only for them to leave you completely blue-balled and unsatisfied as the potential of the ideas being played with is never fully realised and the band just seem so excited to just get on to the next song for some reason. Even longer tracks like Bleed Out, Trey and Cannibal feel like they could have done with a bit longer in the oven, making for an album that left me with only 3 words to say after the final track played out. Was that it? Previous albums left me feeling elated, like I'd been witnessing the meteoric rise of the new stars of modern progressive metal. Just go back to In Mazes, listen to tracks like Owls, Starburn, Gutter Moon, Feed the Creatures, and the iconic title track, and straight-facedly tell me that anything from this album is fit to even kiss the toes of those songs. And I think this is where my frustration with this album stems from. This band have proven over 3 records that they are capable of so much more than this. Friend of a Phantom feels like the band operating on autopilot, pushing out a sense of good enough for government work around the output. The passion feels gone, the energy dissipated, and the band who were once known for not being afraid of upsetting the established order of their own sound have pushed out a record that barely feels enough to even be called B-sides to Witness. So, what else can I possibly say about VOLA's Friend of a Phantom? Look, you're mad at me for this review. I'm grotesquely incorrect. I'm not a real fan. I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other. I've not listened to it enough, yada yada yada. I get it, okay? I really do get it. I'm mad at this review too. I wanted to be sat here telling you that VOLA have once again delivered the goods and reached a new apex in their career as musicians. But instead I've been left gnashing my teeth in frustration at how wide of the mark this album has landed for me. I generally try to stay positive in my reviews on this channel. I don't particularly enjoy punching down on a band, especially when they formed a pretty integral part of the soundtrack of my life in the past. But I also feel duty-bound to be honest with you all when something also lands into camp disappointment. And I get it, you know, I really do. I could very well be in the minority with this opinion, which, it's fine, you know, that is fine. This is ultimately not a gospel mandate as to how everyone should feel about Friend of a Phantom, And if this is your favourite VOLA album or your first exposure to the band and you completely disagree with me, then that's also fine. But you still need to listen to the breakdown of Gutter Moon of In Mazes at around the sort of 2 minutes and 7 seconds mark and realise that nothing on this album comes even close to that level of hype. Sadly, my personal recommendation is to give this one a skip, I'm afraid. It's just not doing anything that the prior albums haven't done like 50 times better anyway. But that being said, I'm certainly not writing off the band, and I'm hoping that they can continue to recapture my attention with whatever comes next. This is all, of course, guys, just my opinion, so if you loved or hated this one, please talk to me about your experience of the album in the comments down below. Please do drop me a thumbs up if you like the video, please do tell your friends all about little old me, and please do throw me a subscription if you've been enjoying my content. And until next time, guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.